I think from all that we've talked about so far, Radhika, is that your career as a leader kind of moves in stages. And sometimes things happen right away for you, but as you grow into it and learn your leadership, you go through different stages of it. So you may start out the gate, it's the hustle, hustle, hustle. Or you may start out the gate as the relaxed, laid back, really, I'm not going to let anything really overwhelm me. But as you get more years under your belt and as your career path progresses, you take twists and turns and you get to different places in being not only the leader, but also as a person. And so when you talk about this resilience, I think that's something that you have to learn over time. But it's something good to grow and learn into. Because when I think about myself, it was really a rat race kind of thing for me. I got to do this. But that was because I felt I had to climb, to the top. But then I got to a point where it was like, well, it's really more all about me as the whole person than just this little piece. So I started to look at it more holistically and say, I want to have this here when it comes to a leader, but I also need to have this over here from a personal side or me as an individual. And so you're right, that balance, what do I want it to be? So you get to a point where you don't let things really get to you. It's like, it's okay. I heard, it happened. It's fine. That's part of all, but let's start from that point and I move on. You know what I'm saying? And not let that hinder me or feel that I'm going to be a failure or, because I used to really feel bad about that. I used to feel, imposter syndrome, so bad about it. But now it's like, okay, maybe for a couple of hours and I'm over it now. You know what I mean? Because I'm good with me. I'm good with self.
I love the point you made. I would offer a slight difference, though. I think the generations coming into the workforce now bring their whole person into work and life, right? I think in our generations maybe thought about, you wear the suit and then you become a part of you becomes like this, right? This template, you know what I mean, right? And then you speak in certain ways, your tone shifts.
Do certain things certain ways, you know what I mean?
Right. And then you don't think necessarily about the mission of the company. You're like, yeah, it's fine, right? What I'm seeing in generations coming in is more of a work is a choice. I'm going to choose something that's aligned with my values. I want to work for a company that conserves the environment, right? I want to be in a place where employees or staff or leadership are able to trust and support each other. Because on the internet, you have all kinds of companies that offer you snapshots of what it's like to work somewhere. So unless you're in a really small business, there's a lot of information out there about culture and values. And so generations that are coming in now are like, do I really want to take my whole person to that place?
Right.
No. Yeah. I want to, my fitness goals matter. Right. So I don't want a job which makes me travel 2 out of 4 weeks a month, right? And so the kind of values-based choices that people might be making are more so now than before. That's my personal observation. I haven't done the research on it, and I could be entirely wrong. But that's what I'm observing. So the question then becomes, if you're the leader that's hiring this generation in,
Right.
what is the environment that the leader is going to signal to the organization that will allow them to feel part of a culture where all of their person fits in, right? And it's more than, we talk about inclusion and diversity and all those constructs.
Mm-hmm.
This is more about my personal values. I really care about corporate social responsibility. What kinds of causes does this company support? Right? So then, as a leader, you're asking yourself, what are we doing as a professional community
Mm-hmm.
to express our values and commitment in terms of these things? So I do think that when you think about the word balance, you're always thinking, what are the work-related measurable goals the organization has to its external stakeholders, like share price or revenue or institutional enrollments, or in higher education, the success of the graduates, right? Those kinds of things. But you're also thinking, are we providing an environment where people have a talent pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
where their particular roles and goals are appreciated?
Yeah.
Well, how do you do that? Part of that is looking inward and saying, what have I done for myself?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am not doing that for my own self, it becomes very difficult to appreciate how to create that for the organization. It'll feel very much like you all get together and have your community building. I'll be over there answering emails.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So you've got to walk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the generation of authenticity, which
Mm-hmm.
is why there are Instagram influencers telling us what kinds of products to buy. And when you look at skincare, you're looking at ethical treatment of animals, not tested on them, or chemicals that are not sourced that deplete the environment. So everything is now assumed to be a dimension that matters, right? And yet, do we really do that when it comes to institutional
Mm-hmm.
leadership, right? Do we think like that? Because then you're attracting these same people through other means than just saying, come here and you get a good job and we'll pay you well, right? Because when there's a competition for talent, what's your winning edge? And it all goes back to that question, right? What is the balance you're achieving? How are you balancing professional and
Mm-hmm.
community needs? How do you demonstrate it? And what kinds of personal actions are you using to show your own leadership team? Because word gets out that you are somebody who is truly interested in supporting people in their quest,
Right.
right? Whatever they define it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one that's cookie cutter, which I feel it was a cookie cutter, right? You fit it in.
Yes.
There wasn't like you bring your whole self and you're like, hey, how do I fit in, right? You're like, I'm driving in, get out of my car, wear
Right.
my jacket, and then
Right.
I'm like, this is me, right?
Right.
Does that sound familiar?
Yep. Like the Stanford doll or something. You know what I mean? I fit in. And that's just the way it was. And so
Yeah.
I do agree with how the fluidness now is, they're starting to see the fluidness. And I think um, leaders in an organization are also coming to a point of understanding that this is kind of this is a new type. It's not a new type of leadership. It's just a shift. It's a shift into a new phase of how we want to look at leadership. And so,
I was just going to say, I love that because just occurred to me as you were talking that it's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about what the pandemic did,
Mm-hmm.
it suddenly made everything a priority, right? I mean, suddenly you're not just sick, you might be very sick,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like an existential question, right? You're like, okay, do I want to say I was answering an email when I was put on a ventilator,
Mm-hmm.
right? So suddenly everything becomes tilted, right? And or maybe right angled. I don't know which way it is,
Uh-huh.
right, corrected. So once that question is in the forefront of society's conversation, it can never be taken away, right?
No.
It can never be unsaid,
No.
right? It's here and it's now.
Yes, it
So
is.
I feel like the post-pandemic view of balance, right? It's not a choice, but for leaders, it's a competitive edge,
Yes, it is.
right? We started by talking about hiring the right team, right?
Right.
Well, to get the right team, you need to be competitive
Right.
because the people who are amazing will have lots of opportunity.
Yes, they will.
And literally, talent drives organizations,
Yes,
right?
it does.
And so, how are we? If I'm the only person that knows what's going on, it's not an organization that's going to function well,
No.
right? Because I'm in charge, I'm making all the decisions, I'm never go on vacation, I'm losing, sight of,
Mhm.
of what matters. So I feel like to be the competitive edge, what do you need to offer? Well, flexibility in work.
Mhm.
Why is there flexibility in work? Because people want balanced lifestyles. You don't want to spend the hour driving in and driving back,
Mhm.
especially to catch a nasty little illness, which might put me in the hospital, right?
Right.
I mean, so I weighed my options and I said, you know what? If I can't really have flexible work hours, I don't want this
It's not
because
for
I'd rather be alive than not, right?
yes. Yeah.
So again, existential.
It's a
So
yeah.
I think that's one thing, the post-pandemic world.
Mhm.
The other thing that's become difficult, which I think there's a lot of conversations going on, and Marilyn, love to hear your thoughts on this,
Mhm.
is the rise in um, two types of anxiety. The anxiety of a workforce that does not have adequate in-person mentorship, right? And the newly arriving entrants, which means they are not always able to get social cues from a particular work culture, right? Because they're not really seeing
Mhm.
people outside of meetings
Right.
and in informal non-work, the typical water cooler,
Mhm.
walking down the hallway, going to an in lunch or
Conversation. Yeah.
coffee. We don't have that. Meetings start, everybody shows up, and we get started, right? There isn't this chit chat. I'd say a word to my neighbor. There is a neighbor. So that's one thing. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. The second thing is the anxiety that seems to have pervaded all aspects of our society. College graduates are having a difficult time getting through college. People at work feeling more stress because they are in meetings from morning to night with no time to travel as such between meetings, right? Well, if you're at home, you can also do a meeting from 12 to 1 while eating, right? We don't take the time out to say, I'm at lunch.
Mhm.
I'm at home. So you think I don't need to eat,
Yeah.
right? It's the consequence of the unbalance
Mhm.
to in person and virtual. And people that I think are seeing the most are new entrants to the workforce because they don't know any other way, right?
Right. Right. You
What
know
are your
what?
thoughts on where we are with that?
For me, when I think about it, it is definitely going to be a balancing act. But we are, as humans, we are creatures like any other species that needs connections. And I think that I don't have the answer to it, but I think it's still very important that we find some kind of balance where we're going to have those interactions. Now, I know I could be, you're in San Diego, I could be in Chicago. There's no way that we're going to commute into the same place. Organization and leaders, I feel, have to figure out some way to make that happen for their employees, if it's nothing but a touch, kind of a touch base. That it could be one time a year, it could be 2 times a year. I understand, the savings on real estate, but I also see, as much as I love the virtual and, working from home, it's still nice to, at some point go in and be with people face to face, because of the fact that we are human social creatures. So I don't have a plan for that, but I think it's necessary, and that leaders are going to have to get together in some way and figure something out so that it kind of has a balance, but it's still not going to overburden or override people that love the balance of, I can do, like you say, really take my lunch or do this and still get my work done. And that's something that's going to be part of the new way we work post-pandemic. And so I always chuckle, because pre-pandemic, I always knew you could work from home and be productive, because I did that. But it was a matter of business catching up with that concept. And so now that we're at that concept, and like you say, with the newer generation coming in, and they're going to want to have that authentic resilience balance, organizations are still figuring it out. And it's going to take some time. So that would be my take on it.
Some companies are having these quarterly gatherings of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe all the things that we talked about, companies do them, like creating a talent pipeline, intentional onboarding process, assigning a mentor with whom you can build that personal connection. Because one-on-one, even if it's virtual, you can build a great connection. You have 10 strangers on a screen.
Yeah.
Right? Then it's impossible to build, like, who are you looking at? Are they looking at me? Am I looking at them? It's very difficult to know. I think the other thing that occurred to me as we were talking about intentional tips and strategies for managers to overcome this, is I think it's important to do things like what I used to do when I was in Europe, a couple of decades ago, which is pretend you're at work, set aside lunch. I mean, you might be meeting somebody for lunch, and so you're going to be walking to picking up lunch and coming back. So why not do the same thing at home, right? I would also set aside 4 to 5 p.m. for reading emails, so that I may not catch up, but at least I know I've seen the most important ones, and I'm not thinking, okay, after I finish dinner, I'm going to get on email, right? I've seen managers put in at the end of their signatures on their emails, a note that says, I'm doing my bit to catch up on emails offline, but know that there is no expectation that you will read it before, other than work hours, right? So that people they're not hearing the pressure of their manager saying, you have to respond, right? I've also seen some people come to me and say, I really need my time before 8 a.m. and after 5:30 p.m. to be protected. So unless it is something very pressing, I will not be reading and responding to emails. And my answer to them was, great. But also know that I tend to be a late night owl. And if I read an email, I want to respond to it because I'm productive at 9 p.m.
Okay.
You can respond to it whenever, but unless it is urgent, I don't expect you to read it at any time other than when it's convenient, right? So trust requires those kinds of explicit working understandings.
Mhm.
And those things can happen in a way that then creates a safe space on Zoom or Teams or Google Hangout or whatever to have that kind of, it's okay.
Mhm.
You will not call me before 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. And if it is urgent, text me.
Mhm.
And if it is urgent and I feel like I need to participate, I'll text you back and then I'll tell you I'm available,
Mhm.
at this hour when the kids are asleep. Um, or I'll say, you go ahead and do whatever you need to do. I'm not available, right? All those options need to be open
Mhm.
because then you are helping people that report to you and the broader community take charge of their balance,
True.
right? Otherwise, all you're signaling is of an intention that you are following yourself.
Mhm.
And that feels inauthentic to the
Yes.
people around you, right? So, in some ways, the tips around balance have to be demonstrating, but also explicitly accommodating. And then talking about that accommodation and telling other people, so and so is not available after 5 p.m. Maybe can this wait till tomorrow if we want to have a meeting? And for that person to say, oh no, it's really urgent, then I'll be like, well, why don't you text them and see if they're available? Because I don't think, or I might say, I don't think this is as urgent.
Mhm.
Let's just see if we can get a meeting first thing at 8 a.m., right? So that you're able to. Oh, the other thing I did was we set aside times where there were no meetings,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
right? So we set aside, you could set aside like, and you do this with professors do this with students. They have office hours,
Right.
but you can just drop in,
Right.
right? So you could set up office hours for everybody between 2 and 4 on Thursdays, no meetings, right? Or on Fridays. What happens is at that time, you can message someone and say, hey, can we get on a quick call?
Mhm.
That feels like you're having ad hoc meetings because you are, but
Mhm.
they tend to be unstructured conversations,
Mhm.
which is a little like the walk to the water cooler,
Right.
right?
Right.
And you can meet people in the hallway, you say hello. So I think that is another way in which you're telling people we want spontaneous outreach. We're all going to be available. Anyone can message anyone else. And that allows people to feel a lowering of being continuously on. With virtual environments, it's difficult,
Yes. It's very difficult.
right? None of this can happen without intention. So for 2024, what are we going for ourselves as leaders for both who we are and what we do,
Mhm.
in terms of balancing our lives, but also demonstrating it for the people that we work with,
Very good.
right? That I think small actions will have large ripple effects.
Well, Radhika, I want to thank you so much for all of your words of wisdoms and examples, and for joining me today. Is there any lasting thing that you want to say before we close?
Thank you for asking. I It's been a journey,
Mm-hmm.
and every year one has the opportunity to stop the minute,
Mm-hmm.
look around the station one's at,
Mm-hmm.
see the oncoming train, and decide if that's the train we're going to take or not. If we decide to, let's be sure to see the gap, because this is a lifelong quest, and let's not waste it without intention. So I would say for the new year, I'd wish everybody a very small shift, a very small change, to take charge. And like you said, Marilyn, show up as someone who minded the gap.
Okay. Thank you, Radhika.
All right.